Hello, this is RICKY, the Android guy. Hey guys, today we're doing a side-by-side comparison between the Samsung Gear 2 and the Moto 360. We're going to see just which one is the best and at which categories. Let's take a look and find out which is the best smartwatch for you. Now, just like smartphones, the first thing we always take a look at when looking between two devices is the look and feel. The Gear 2 is the older of the two, and therefore it carries on an evolution of the original Gear series. So on this one, they did take everything away from the band so it can be interchangeable, as you see that I have a metal band on here. And you do have the ability to have the camera and home button right in the middle, just kind of like you do on a lot of smartphones nowadays. Well, two main ones, of course. You always have a physical home button or a touch home button. On this one, the physical button is, again, where a smartphone would be. Overall, though, it is a square design. I like the silver trim that this one has. It also can come in a gold trim for the Gear 2 model. Now, the Moto 360 took everyone by storm when it came out. Everyone was like, oh my god, it's a round watch. That's so beautiful. And it is. It really is. And that's what makes it stand out so much, that everything on the interface just really stands out in terms of how it looks and is designed. Now, it comes with either leather straps, or you can always get the new metal straps that are just coming out now, and has a little ring right there for its sort of home button or on button. And if you hold it down, that's where you go into the settings. So yes, and which one really is going to win in look and feel? Well, definitely it is going to be the Moto 360. It's just a better overall look and feel between two smartwatches. We do like the round concept much better, and the thinness of this bezel is really beautiful compared to the thickness of other bezels on the market. However, I do have to deduct some points for this flat tire, so to speak. It really takes a specific watch so that you don't notice it, and if you ever have a watch that has color on the face, well, you notice it tremendously. I purposely always try to switch every clock to a black color, simply for the fact that I don't want that tire to show. So every single clock on here I'll switch to a black color just so it doesn't show, because when you do have it on a lighter color, it really is pronounced and it looks ugly. So it's one of my pet peeves. Might not be for everyone. Some people don't mind it, but for me, it definitely is something I noted. Now, one of my biggest important features when it comes to a smartwatch is the battery life. Now, this is the latest version on the Moto 360, so I do want to note that, because when it first came out, the battery life was just horrible. It really was, and it was one of the reasons why I didn't compare or review the 360 for a long time between the Gear 2, because the battery life killed it for me. It made it unimportant to me, and that was one thing that I could not stand about it. Now, till this day, with all the latest updates, you can now get an easily full day battery life, which in the beginning, it definitely was draining on me within 5 hours, within 6 hours, 7 hours. It kept getting a little push with an update, but now I would say for most average people, you're going to get a little over 12 hours, which is nice and good to have. The Gear 2, however, is the king of battery life in smartwatches with a non-e-paper screen. So, of course, the Pebble and Hot Watch are going to be really good at that. But overall, with any kind of color display, the Gear 2 definitely takes it. As a heavy user, especially, I typically get 3 days out of this watch, which is something that we don't have on Android Wear, at least not yet. We'll see if some others change that. But for right now, even on any Android Wear device, you don't have this kind of battery life, and this is one thing that I do love about the Gear 2. 3 days, I don't have to charge it every night, and that's such a big feature for, I feel, a lot of people. Once they have a smartwatch, that's one of the greatest features that most people will appreciate. Another very important feature when it comes to a smartwatch is app support. So both of these devices come with their own app that's a companion to it. However, I would say that overall, the Gear Manager coming from Samsung is a bit more useful. It just kind of breaks down everything, I would say a little bit easier, even tells you rather quickly when apps have updates. And the reason why it's not the same on Android Wear is simply because of a couple of things. One, you really don't have an app that's normally made for it exactly. So you kind of have to even just go to a different store. This store is horrible. Never use it. You'll only find a few apps. However, on the actual Wear store that a third party made, this isn't again the must-have app for Android Wear. You can see that Android Wear now has over 610 apps. The Gear 2, however, has over 1,000 apps. And in my day-to-day usage, I find that they're very close in terms of which ones I will download. But the thing I like about the Gear apps is that they don't mix in with my regular app drawer. I have so many apps just in my app drawer simply because of the fact that they're Android Wear apps and they're in my app drawer. The one thing I do like about Gear apps is they're almost never in the app drawer. These are the only ones that do show up, but all the rest are in my device, but yet I have to actually go into the Gear Manager to see all of my different apps. And that is one thing that I do definitely appreciate. I don't want it in my. They're not apps that I use on a daily basis for my watch on my phone. They're apps for my watch. I want them separate. So that is one thing that I definitely do appreciate. And overall, in terms of apps themselves, besides their usefulness, both have stores full of watch faces. First of all, let me say that. I was originally going to put all my Wear apps in here, but almost 10 of them were just watch faces. So they have a lot of watch faces on both of them. However, in terms of apps that are useful, I have tended to lean a little bit towards the Gear 2 for now, and obviously it has 1,000 apps, more than 610 apps. However, very important to note, developing has really boomed on Android Wear. So although it seems that, well, 1,000 compared to 610 is a big deal, you have to keep in mind that this has been out for a much shorter time period. So eventually, the scale will tip on the other side, and the Moto 360 will have more apps than the Gear 2, just because of all the app support. So that is something you have to keep in mind when considering the app population. It is something that is current, but might not be the same even by the time you see this video. Next category is input. Input is definitely important because how do you use this device? How do you input into it? Both devices activate with voice. So for the S voice, you can double tap the home button and it will activate S voice. And for Google, you can actually simply say, "Okay, Google." Now, for this method, OK Google will be better in terms of voice. It just obviously launches a lot easier in comparison to this one because you don't even have to touch it. However, there is one advantage that the Gear 2 has, and that is you can actually have a keyboard on it. So when we go into the app, you can actually just reply, and then you have a full keyboard. This is a feature that Android Wear does currently not have, and it's a feature that I definitely like. The fact that I have an option. Sometimes you just want to do more besides voice. Even in how you get to the apps, there is an app that I downloaded that is called Wear Mini Launcher, which really just makes it so much better to find the apps. But if I didn't have this, man, this is such a bad way to navigate to find apps. Whereas here, you can post your favorites on your main screens, and then you can go to your app drawer, just like on Android, to actually see all of your apps. Now, while you can do that on here, this is the process that you have to go through. You have to swipe all the way down, and then hit start, and then go to it. You can, of course, say start an app with your voice, but you can also do that with S-Voice on here. So it just, in terms of navigating too, it's a hard hit for the Moto 360 on this. But overall input method is just easier, and even navigation overall is going to be easier with the Gear 2. Now, having had the Moto 360 for over a month, really one of the main things that I realized that I used more often than I thought was the ability to pick up a call on my watch. It's something that I got very used to and familiar with on the Gear 2, and didn't think I used it that much, but once I could not do it on here, it really, really was a miss, and I continuously wanted to pick up a call on it, but every time I would pick up a call on here, it would actually just be on here. I found that very annoying, that why can you answer a call on here instead of maybe just rejecting it, just like on the Gear Fit, which is Samsung's version that does almost the same thing in terms of rejecting a call or replying with a quick text message. That is what the Gear Wear should do until it has a built-in mic and speaker, which is compatible with a being able to talk into the watch. At least of right now, from the updates that I've seen from Android Wear, it does not plan on doing this, although it is one of the biggest asks that I would ask from Android Wear. I want to be able to pick up calls on my watch. This is something that the Gear 2 does, and of course, on both, you can reply to text messages, which is nice, but I just don't understand why they didn't put the ability to have it on a smartwatch to pick up a call and take the call right here. It's just a much nicer feature, and it's something that I end up using on the Gear 2, quite frankly. And again, more than I thought. It's just those few times when I was moving, I remember, I was just like, oh, I can't pick up the call on this one, but I could on this one. Things like that really kind of stuck out to me, and it's one thing that I did miss when not having my Gear 2. A new category I've added to the smartwatch comparisons has been charging. Charging, I feel, is important because it's something that you're going to have to do either on a daily basis or on a semi-weekly basis. So for this purpose, I really like the ability of wireless charging. It's just nice to plop the watch down and it will then charge. Now both of these connect via micro USB, so you can use any charger really that you have laying around with a micro USB. However, being able to just dock it like that is much easier than putting it like this. It's just, and by the way, none of these are the same. From the Gear 1 to the Gear 2 to the Gear Neo to the Gear Live. Every one of these are different. Samsung, there's no reason for this. There's no reason. This should all be the same charger. It's the same kind of pins. Yes, I know they're different places, but just don't make it in different places. Make it the same charger. Because of this, I really despise the Samsung Gear 2 charger, whereas I much prefer the wireless charging that you get from the Moto 360. So for charging, it will easily be taken by the Moto 360. Now, the next category hasn't changed, and it's been one of the major losses the Gear has always had, and that is compatibility. See, for this device, you can actually be able to have the ability to, on the Gear 2, to be able to use it only with the Samsung watch. However, or Samsung smartphone rather. However, with the 360, you can use it with any Android device. This obviously gives the ability to every other Android device besides Samsung. So on here, you can use it with the Nexus, you can use it with the Motorola devices, you can use it with the LG devices, Sony devices, HTC devices, basically any device on an Android platform, whereas the Gear 2 obviously just works with Samsung. So this is obviously going to be easily, for compatibility, you're going to want to go with the Moto 360. Now, when it comes to extras on the device, the Moto 360 provides one main extra, and that is, of course, the heart rate monitor on the back. Other than that, though, you really don't have anything extra on the device. On the Gear 2, however, you do have two main extras that are not always typically on a smartwatch. The first is going to be the ability to take a photo, a very quick one at that, just very easily to just tap open and then tap and take it. Very simple and easy, and then as soon as you close it, it'll immediately put it on the phone. Another really nice feature is the IR blaster. You can quickly turn on, set up your TV and cable box, and it's something that you can use a lot. I personally do not use this, but my friend swears by it. He was one person that was very happy when smartphones started having IR blasters to control his TV, and now that they're on the watch, he goes to the watch instead of even his phone. So for those two purposes, extras will definitely be on the Gear. However, I do want one important note. Although both of these are IP67, and this is a changeable band as well, just like the Gear is, I have heard nothing but the worst complaints about trying to swap out the bands on the Moto 360, which is why they actually recommend you just get their bands. It really is, I can see why, just because the way it goes in is much more difficult than leaving it on the outside as Samsung does. It's much easier to remove the bands and swap them out than it is on the 360. And again, for this reasons, the extras category will go to the Gear 2. Now, when it comes down to the price point between these two, we obviously have a winner. That is that the Moto 360 costs $249, whereas the Gear 2 still costs the expensive price point of $299. Between these two, obviously the better bang for your buck is going to be the Moto 360. Again, because we always go by, does it give you basically the same experience and essentially the same usage? Yes. So because it does, and because they have the same specs really in terms of hardware and storage, you have to give it to the Moto 360 for being the better bang for your buck at $249 compared to the $299 Gear 2. All right, let's tally them up and see who won. When it comes to look and feel, it's easily the Moto 360. Gotta love that circular design, and I really wish Samsung would come up with something similar to this. When it comes to battery life, easily going to be the Gear 2. 3-day battery life compared to 1-day battery life, I'll take that any day of the week. When it comes to app support, right now it's going to be the Gear 2. The reason why that's so important to note is because Android Wear is growing at a faster rate than the Gear Store did grow. So for that reason, right now, Gear 2, I would say, does have better apps, wider selection, whereas Android Wear is closing in fast. Input is going to go to the Gear 2 simply because you are able to text on it besides just the voice to text feature. And I do want to note that the voice to text I would say is more accurate on Android Wear, but because it is limited to only voice to text, even just for launching an app, it is very limited, and therefore the Gear 2 is not only easier to navigate the device, but for inputting text itself, it's going to have the keyboard feature, which the Gear Wear does not. Android Wear does not. For call and text, obviously only one can do both, although both can voice to text for a text message. Calling capability isn't on Android Wear currently at this time, and that is lacking, especially surprisingly more for me than I thought until I didn't have it. So for that purpose, absolutely, I would say the fact that calling and texting goes to the Gear 2. When it comes to charging, it is so much nicer to have wireless charging built in on a smartwatch, and it's something that I hope all other companies adopt. And for this reason, yes, I will give charging to Android Wear because it's just so much more convenient. Compatibility will also, of course, go to the Moto 360 just because it is going to be compatible with many more devices on Android, in fact, all of Android, as opposed to just Samsung devices. So for compatibility, it will be the Moto 360. For the extras category, this is where Gear 2 does shine. You do have an IR blaster, you have a camera built in, you of course have the heart rate monitor that both have, but it's really nice to have the ability to switch out bands a lot easier, not to mention again, of course, the calling capability that the Moto 360 doesn't have. And when it comes to price point, the Moto 360 is going to be $50 cheaper. Despite Samsung being out for over a year now, it hasn't dropped in price from its original $299 price point. For that reason, the Moto 360 is going to be the better bang for your buck. And when we tally them all up, it is going to be the Gear 2 from Samsung. The reason why this is very important to note is because if the app support goes to the Moto 360 at a later date, then these would actually be the opposite. It would actually be the Moto 360. But if you want look and feel, better charging, obviously more compatibility, and price point, you're going to want to go for the Moto 360. However, if you want a much better battery life, easier to input, the ability to take calls on the device, and lots of nice extras, you are going to want to go with the Gear 2. So decide which one you want on, and please give a thumbs up down below. Thank you for watching. This has been RICKY, the Android Guy.